morning, everyone. My name is Taryn, and you are watching my channel, Nicole Flower House. This channel is all about my cut flower garden, and I'm located in Zone 7B. Now is the time of year where I'm starting to harden off my seedlings and get them used to being outside. Instead of taking my seedlings in and out and slowly increasing their exposure to the sun and the wind and everything like that, I moved them into one of my garden beds and I put several layers of frost cloth over them. And every other day or so, I'll take a layer of the frost cloth off so they get more sunlight. I also will leave the sides of the frost cloth open so I won't tag it all the way down to the garden bed, letting them get more and more wind exposure. And I do this over the course of about a week so that I don't have to move the trays inside and outside every day. It's a little bit easier and it's just a different way of approaching it. You still have to pay attention to the seedlings every day and adjust their environment a little bit. But I would rather do this than carry the trays around. The next thing I was working on was getting my garden beds ready to plant the seedlings into. That meant taking out the old and spent tulips that I had in these two boxes. I plant my tulips as annuals, meaning I dig them out every year. These are the tulips that I thought I had buried deep enough from the previous season and thought they wouldn't come back, but they did. So you can see this year when I dug them out, a lot of the bulbs are very small and the stems are very spindly, so that really wasn't the ideal conditions for them. I'm also going to be digging out this year's tulips so I don't have the same situation next spring. This fall, I may change the way I'm planting all of my garden beds to allow the opportunity for these tulips to come back. Sometimes they won't come back just because our climate is not cold enough in Zone 7B to give them a proper chill over the winter, but there is a chance that they could come back, so I'm wondering if I plant these in rows, leaving space for my summer flowers to go in without having to take the tulips out if they would come back. That's something I'm looking into for next year, but as of right now, I'm just going to take out the old bulbs and replant fresh ones next fall like I do every season. This bed is now all cleaned up and I'm really liking the way it looks, and I'm also pleasantly surprised with how much the soil has improved since last year. The soil is about 3 years old now, and I always try to add organic material and mulches to them. It really has improved over the years. I have noticed that the longer the soil ages and the more you work on it, the better it performs. Even though when I build my garden boxes, I bring in really high quality garden blends that have compost and other good things in them, they just don't work the same. The soil needs time for the microbial life to come in, for the earthworms to come in. All the things in nature that make soil alive takes time. I also like to leave roots from plants in the beds, so when I'm cleaning up things, I'll cut them off at the top instead of pulling them all the way out. As those roots break down, they also feed the soil and the life in the soil. Now I'll move on to showing you some updates in the garden. It's about a week later, so the seedlings have been hardened off and they're planted throughout. Here are the willow, and they are growing up nicely and branching out just like I'd hoped. I wasn't sure when they first started sprouting, but they look good now. In this bed here where I have poppies, I planted in new seedlings of dill and basil. I'm hoping since the poppies are still full that they'll protect these baby seedlings from a lot of wind and excessive sun. And as the poppies finish up, these guys should be really taking off and I'll have a nice succession of plants in here. The bachelor's buttons have been giving me tons of blooms, and they have been one of my favorite things that I started in the fall and overwintered. They're performing so well, and I have flowers off of these so much earlier than I did last year that I'll definitely be doing that again. I had a lot of extra space in this bed where I tried to plant a lot of carnations in the fall. I had some of them work out, but most of them didn't, so I decided to fill it up with new snapdragon seedlings. Here is a shot of the carnations that did work out that I planted last fall, and they have buds on them, so I'm hoping to get flowers soon. I didn't get flowers off my carnations last year because it got too hot too fast. But I'm really excited because carnations are supposed to smell like cloves. A lot of times when you get them from the store or the florist, they don't really have a scent. But when you grow them fresh in your garden, they're supposed to smell like cloves. And a lot of people say that they smell like Christmas. So I'm really excited to see what happens with these. Most of the snapdragons that I planted last fall now have buds on them and are starting to color up. So I'm guessing within a couple weeks I should have a lot of snapdragon blooms. I did have one early one that I already cut, but the rest should be following soon. This is a new bulb I just planted last fall. I think it's called Snowdrop or something similar. It's a perennial. I do really like them. They're really sweet to put in the bottom of arrangements and let them hang out. I have noticed they turn a little bit brown after a few days, but they're still pretty nice. I have some celery seedlings planted in front of these sweet peas. The sweet peas I pinched about 3 weeks ago, maybe 2 weeks ago, and now they're starting to take off and really climb again. I decided to try some direct sowing of my heat-loving annuals that are quick growing. I did plant some cosmos seeds and they have germinated and started to come up. I kind of missed the window to get those started indoors and I wanted to plant a lot of them, so I thought I would try direct sowing them. This is the bed that I have ranunculus planted on top of my dahlias. I see a lot of ranunculus starting. You can cut them at this stage when the buds are soft and colored up, and that makes them a lot easier to transport. They're less fragile. But I don't see many dahlias coming up. I'm going to have to get in there and look closer. So I'm not sure if it was just the ones that I planted there didn't come up or if the ranunculus has something to do with it. The dahlias are planted pretty much in 2 straight rows. So in the fall, when I put the ranunculus back in, fresh ones, I'm going to put them next to the dahlias instead of just scattering them all about. And luckily, in the rest of the 5 beds that I had also moved dahlias from the back garden up here and let them stay in the ground over winter, have started to sprout up. So I'm really glad this experiment worked. Most of the dahlias are coming up, and I wasn't sure if they would. We got a lot of rain over the winter. I thought the tubers might have rotted, but it looks like a lot of them have pulled through. I have 3 more beds over here that have ranunculus in them that are also looking nice. They're starting to get buds on them. You can never have too many ranunculus. That's kind of how I feel when I'm planting these, so I do have a lot. The sweet peas are looking good. These are the ones that I planted in the winter, so they're a lot farther along than the seedlings that I planted that you saw earlier. They did suffer a little bit of frost damage. We had a hard freeze about, I don't know, maybe 2 weeks ago. There's a little bit of damage on them, but they pulled through. I do have some ranunculus that are starting to flower and open up. Usually the first stems that a plant puts off for me are not the greatest in quality. They're a little bit short, but as the plant matures throughout the season, they will produce better stems and better flowers. Here is one of my newly planted David Austin roses. It was a bare root and it now has nice green foliage coming on. And next to that, I have a tray of foxglove seedlings. I started these from seeds. They're looking really nice, and I will be planting these out in the front yard. Toward the beginning of April, I took a risk and planted some sunflower seedlings out here next to the garden boxes. These ones did survive that hard freeze we had. I'm not sure if the garden box itself provided just enough warmth to keep those guys going. This is a tray of ornamental grass. It's bunny tails. I have quite a few seedlings left that need to go in the garden, but I'm about halfway through, which is a welcomed change from last year. I have some tomatoes and delphiniums and a lot more snapdragons. Here is a dahlia that I planted up. I got the tubers really early, so I decided to pot those up and get them ready in the garage, and they have a little bit of a head start on the other dahlias. But the other dahlias that wintered over and popped up may catch up to this one pretty quickly. This tray of seedlings I started quite a few weeks later than the other ones, so they're a lot smaller and don't need to go into the garden yet. This ranunculus here is one that I missed when pulling them out last season. It still has really short stems, but I'm going to keep an eye on it to see if I can get anything useful out of it, and then consider leaving other ranunculus in the ground next fall as well. I'm really happy with the way these calendula are turning out. They were also planted in the fall, and their foliage had so much damage on it throughout the winter. This year I'll have to be better about keeping more frost cloth over them, but they've really recovered. They have new foliage that looks great, and the blooms are really fluffy and pretty. This is one of the beds that used to have tulips in it, and now it has brand new seedlings planted up. This garden box has mostly herbs in it. It's thyme and oregano. And on the end here, before I get to the trellis, there is eucalyptus. It looked really terrible at the beginning of the spring, early spring, but now it's starting to put on some greener growth and it looks nice again. I really don't want to leave this here, so I may just pull it out in the fall. I have new seedlings that I want to put in a different place that can stay as a perennial bed. I want to eventually coppice these eucalyptus the same way I do the willow. And the sweet peas on this trellis are actually starting to put on buds and hopefully will flower soon. And at this point, I am out of sunlight. It is dusk. That is all for today's garden tour. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. And the best way you can support me and my channel is to subscribe and share it with your flower loving friends. I'll see you next time. Bye.